think we'll go ahead and get started out of respect for everybody's time. We do have a lot of information to share tonight that we're looking forward to sharing with the community. My name is Dana Bird. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of South Haven. How is the sound out there? Can everybody hear okay? Okay, I'll try not to blow you away because I know the speakers are pretty close. So, but we are recording the meeting tonight, and we're going to be sharing that on the website as well as the presentation. So I'm going to be talking tonight for a while about SHAWSA's rates and fees. We also have the South Haven City Engineer, Mike Dopp, here. He does a lot of the connection fee estimates for people when they need to do connections onto the system. And we have a lot of our staff in the audience as well, in our SHAWSA board members. So tonight we have about a half hour, probably more like 40-minute presentation. We're going to walk through 3 different parts of the presentation and then have time for question and answer at the end. So I know a lot of folks filled out comment cards and got those to Megan. So at the end, we'll go through as many of those as we can in the time that we have. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. So why are we having this meeting tonight? Well, we thought it was a good time to address the community and talk about why our rates are set the way they are. We're in a time of significant investment in the system right now. There's a lot of high visible work happening on the water system. There's a lot of work happening at our wastewater treatment plant. And these projects have been several years in the making, but they're all happening right now. And a lot of the reasons our rates and fees are what they are is because of these continuous investments that we have in the system. So we thought it was a good time to talk about everything that was going on and how that is all being paid for. A lot of the projects that we have right now are required by the state of Michigan. So the fact that we're building a new elevated storage tank is a great asset for the system to have, but it's because we have an old tank that the state is requiring us to take out of service. We also have a system-wide lead service line replacement project going on. That was a requirement from the state of Michigan. And so a lot of these things that we're doing, also improvements at the wastewater plant, come with requirements from the state. So the water system, the sewer system is very highly regulated by the state and the EPA, and there's certain requirements for that we have to meet, and that's why a lot of the work is happening. In response to that, the SHAWSA board has adopted a 5-year rate stability plan where water and sewer rates have been increasing steadily. We're working toward more of a cost of inflationary increase into the future and try and avoid any rate spikes with that. We also wanted to have the meeting just for transparency and to give people a better understanding of why they pay what they pay for the system. And then we'll have all these resources available for future reference as well. So as an overview for tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about how infrastructure really is part of the foundation of the community. We're going to get into the understanding of the rates and the fees, and then go over some of our operations, ongoing projects, and some of the benchmarks that we look at when we do system funding studies and decide to set rates the way that we do. So just as a quick bit of history for folks, I thought this was really interesting to go through the kind of where did all this infrastructure come from on the system. And going all the way back to the 1890s when downtown caught on fire several times, they started building fire cisterns. And then back then they were building waterworks, storage towers. There was an electric utility plant built. Our records for pipes that are in service today on the sewer system date all the way back to 1896. So we have a lot of records that were from the sewer system that was built before South Haven even became a city. It was a village at that time, which I kind of found to be fascinating. South Haven became a city in 1902, and then the state of Michigan didn't start regulating water and sewer systems until 1913. So a lot of the things we have in the ground are very old, and we've gradually, over generations, been renewing and replacing some of those things, but we still have a lot of things that we're working on. The wastewater treatment plant along the river was built back in the 30s. That was around the same time that Blue Star Highway was built, so even before the interstate. The water plant and Lake Michigan intake were built in the 50s. The electric generation plant, which is where the water filtration plant is now, was retired in the 60s. And then For the wastewater plant, about 30 years after it was built, it underwent a major renovation. So there's always cycles every 30 years or so of these big periods of investment in the system, because none of our infrastructure is going to last forever. Want to talk also about Casco and South Haven townships. They formed a separate governing body called the Water and Sewage Treatment Authority back in the 80s. And that kind of leads us to kind of our modern era of utility management for the community. It's not just the city infrastructure, it's collectively the South Haven area that manages all the water and wastewater for the public systems. There's a lot of information on this slide, but some of the key points on here are that in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a pretty significant expansion of infrastructure among the townships. Almost all of Covert Township had public water installed in it, and they're not a member of the authority, but they're served by us through agreement. And then South Haven and Casco Townships also built a lot of infrastructure at that time. That leads back to growth and being able to have other development in the community, housing and commercial. A lot of the septic systems that people try and build have certain requirements and space availability, and given what's in the soil, sometimes it's difficult to get that permitted through the county, and so there was a larger expansion of infrastructure at that time. As well as when people try and put in a private drinking water well, a lot of times you don't get the productivity from those wells, and they're more susceptible to contamination. So there was a fairly large expansion of infrastructure into the rural areas surrounding the city back then. And in 2011, the water filtration plant that we have today was built. That was 60 years after the original plant. So, you know, a water filtration plant that's a major piece of infrastructure lasted us about 60 years before we had to reconstruct that. In 2016, there was a period of investment where there were a lot of projects done on the system, and a lot of the old debt that was taken on to build things was refinanced. So that was a significant cost savings to the system when that was able to be refinanced. And that kind of brings us to where we are today in the late 2010s and into 2023, 26, where the communities got together and decided to work together collectively, collaboratively, and form a true water and sewer authority. And I'll get into more on that, but just to give you a sense of the time frame, you know, there's been a lot of generational investment into the system, but where we are today is in the middle of a period of another part of that investment. So our infrastructure in general, in the background here, we have a picture of our wastewater treatment plant and its current state. Everything we do has a predictable life cycle to it. You know, pipes they can last up to 80 years. Some of our pipes last 100 years. Pumps, they have a certain life cycle to it. But when we look at how we manage the infrastructure, there is a predictable life cycle to that. And all of those assets are essential to making sure that we can support the community. When the water turns on, it's coming out. When it goes away, it gets treated and discharged to the environment. But nothing we have in the ground lasts forever. None of our buildings, none of our pipes. So we're constantly reviewing that to decide when to make investments into those and how to do that in a stable and sustainable way that we can meet the growth needs of the community, meet the compliance needs of the system, and do that in a safe and reliable way that's fiscally sustainable. So just as kind of a big picture, that's where a lot of our thinking comes in. So SHAWSA formed back in 2016 and 2017, and there were a lot of reasons that it came together. This language I included on the slides here, I don't expect anybody to read all that, but this is directly from some of the agreements that were put together at that time. And a couple of things that jump out are the collaborative management and control aspect of it. So if you have critical systems that support your community, they're all interconnected. If they're managed by several separate bodies, it can get complicated, and people can start worrying about what's mine and not worrying about what's everyone else's. And so the leadership at the time saw that, and they recognized that, and they recognized that infrastructure really you have to think about in terms of 30 to 100-year timeframes. And so to have a common ownership system where there's a collaborative management view of that, they formed the Water and Sewer Authority. So what is SHAWSA? It's a separate, self-governed public body. It has the ability to own, it has the ability to be sued, it has the ability to take on debt, and so it has all those same abilities as a separate local government entity. And so, again, formed for collaborative management and control, common ownership, and really there was a cost effectiveness component to that as well, where the local governments recognized that if they were to each try and manage their own systems with their own separate permitting requirements, their own supply, their own treatment, all of that, it was really more cost effective for everyone to get together and have like a shared services model. It gets confusing for folks because SHAWSA doesn't actually have staff. So I'm an employee of the city of South Haven, as is Mike, as are all the people who work on the system. And the city of South Haven also sends out all the utility bills. So people get a bill from the city of South Haven, they don't get a bill from SHAWSA. That's done that way because a lot of that shared service element is housed within the city. So when people pay for water and sewer, they're paying to support SHAWSA's operation of the utility collectively, but their actual bill goes to the city, and then financially, we have accounting systems within the city and within SHAWSA to make sure those funds go towards supporting the water and sewer authority's business in that way. We have a lot of support within the city as the administrative body for SHAWSA. We do all the operations and maintenance on the system. We do the finances. We do the utility billing and the customer service aspects of that. So it made sense to keep all of that together. We don't need two separate groups of staff doing similar things. We can do that in a cost-effective way to share services. Our current SHAWSA board members are pictured here. Some of them are in the audience tonight if you want to raise your hand. You know, these folks represent the customers of the system. There's a 7-member board. It's appointed by each local unit. 3 members are supported by the city, 2 from Casco and 2 from South Haven Township. So I wanted to give people a little bit of an overview of our service area. This is my slide where we talk about all the stuff that we have. You know, we have miles of water main in the ground. This map in blue shows all the water service areas. Covert Township is boxed out in yellow because they're not a member of the authority, but we operate and we maintain their system. So from a regulatory standpoint, they're viewed separately for the state of Michigan, but we have agreements with them to operate and maintain their system, and they are customers of the system, just like other folks are customers of the system. The sanitary sewer service area is outlined in orange, so it's a much smaller area. So we have more water customers than we do sewer customers. And then we have some major assets that I highlighted here on the system. So a lot of utility systems may purchase water from a water plant and send their water to a wastewater treatment plant, and multiple local governments may use that. Well, we have our own water filtration plant. We have our own wastewater treatment plant. So those are major assets on the system that have to be run, they have to be compliant, and they have to be paid for. And we have a decent sized service area, but we're also along the shore of Lake Michigan. And so if you try to compare us to like a city of Kalamazoo, you know, they're essentially based, and their service area can expand out all the way around their service area, where ours is limited by the lake, and we kind of follow up and down the lake shore. So every utility system is unique. I'm trying to highlight some of the unique aspects of our system because that really plays into the rates and fees. And people always try and compare one community's rates to another community's rates. It's very difficult to do. From a customer standpoint, you look at it from what do you pay for, but from a system management standpoint, we look at all the things that go into the history of the system, how much debt we have from prior decisions made, prior generations of investment, and what is unique about our service area. So we do have a lot of unique aspects to our system that's very different from other systems. Regardless of all that, we still have to set our rates and charges to be able to fund and operate our system. I wanted to highlight a little bit about our customer base. So we have about 5,900 water customers and about 4,100 sewer customer accounts. The population served is much bigger than that, but those are just account numbers. The distribution of our water accounts, a little over half of the accounts are in the city, and then a little less than half are among South Haven, Casco, and Covert Township. You know, this system that we have, when people turn their water on, when people flush their toilet, it needs to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of the year. And so we have to make sure that system is sized for the peaks as well as the averages and the lows. And so just as a highlight note, our system, even though we only have under 6,000 accounts, during peak weekends, the whole area can have upwards of 70,000 people in them. So on an average day, we run a lot less than that, but we have to be able to handle those peak times as well. A little more information about our customer base. One of the things that's unique to our system, we don't have a major industrial customer. A lot of water systems that I've been involved with over the years might have a 20% or a 40% usage customer that can really support a lot of the system. This table is showing from 2022 our top 10 water users that use about 10% of our overall flow. And what this table tells me is we do have a couple larger use customers, but there's no major utility, industrial, or commercial customer there. In fact, the city splash pad is one of the larger use items as well as our wastewater treatment plant. And so all of that water is tracked and billed, but it's spread out equitably among all our customer base. So just to touch on another aspect of the system, I play a lot of Monopoly with my kids. It's my theory is, you know, if you can get your hotels on there, you've won the game. But nobody ever buys the utilities when you play Monopoly. And there's a reason for that. It's because they don't really make any money. You know, we don't run on a profit model. We run on a cost of service model. And so what it costs to run the utility, that's what we charge the customers. And along with having a utility that's been around for over 100 years, you have debt from prior investments. So before SHAWSA formed, there was about, our balances on our debt were about $30 million. So there's still $30 million in prior obligations out there from before when SHAWSA was formed. The leadership of SHAWSA and the city did do a lot of debt refinancing in 2016, which saved quite a bit of money. But those debts still have to be paid by the customer base, and those are going to be lasting until 2034 and some until 2049. And then with our current projects that we're taking on, we were fortunate to get $20 million in grants to help us pay for all the work we're doing now, but it also comes along with $22 million in more debt on the system. As a authority or a local government, we're able to borrow money at below market rates. So a lot of our loans come over a 30 or 40 year term at around 2 to 2.5%. So the state has programs, the federal government has programs that allow utilities to do that because they recognize that infrastructure is very expensive, and to make these investments and avoid really spiking rates, if we can do a very low interest loan over a long period of time, that helps us keep rates as stable as we can on the system. So when we talk about rates, I wanted to set the stage because you really need to have some understanding of the assets that make up the system and the amount of debt that we carry on the system, because those types of things drive a lot of the decision making in terms of what do you charge people today. So just an overview of some of the points on How do we decide when we make investments, which in turn is when we have to look at rates? The customers have to cover that existing debt. There's a lot of prior investment that's been done that lasts for quite a few years. Nobody takes those decisions to borrow that amount of money very lightly. We study it very hard. We plan years and years in advance. We look for opportunities for grants to lower the cost of the projects. And those low interest loans really do help with a rate stability plan. In our recent debt, we're fortunate to get $20 million in grants to do a lot of the projects that were required by the state of Michigan. So I did want to share with everybody kind of our rate stability plan. I know the community has seen increases of around 6.9 and 4.5% on water and sewer. That was our last rate adjustment that went into effect in July. We're forecasting more rate increases on the sewer system because there's a lot of needs with our wastewater treatment plant currently. And then the water system, we're moving more quickly toward more of an inflationary type of adjustment over time. The last customer increase from 2025 that went into effect for the average customer is about $2.80 a month on the water system, about $5 a month on the sewer system. So we're looking toward getting a stable plan where we can get those down to just kind of inflationary adjustments every year. Communities can really get into trouble when they don't make any rate increases for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden they have to make a 10%, 20% increase. If you follow rates around the state of Michigan, there's a lot of communities who have been doing that because they've kind of been lagging on investing in their system, and there are a lot of statewide requirements that we have to meet. So when we talk about fiscal responsibility for the system, we want to set our rates to be what it costs to operate and keep the system going. That's a cost of service basis. We look at our debt coverage ratios, our cash reserves, and optimal operating. We'll talk a little more about that. And this idea of continuous stewardship into capital investments, we look for those opportunities to leverage grant funding on when we make these types of investments. We're constantly thinking about how long can an asset last before it is a loss of service. If we do lose service on that asset, how many people does it affect? That's kind of how our thinking goes. And the overall goal of this is to avoid spikes and make rates predictable, make it a stable rate structure for the community. So for SHAWSA, it was created to work together on a unique system that's really essential to supporting the community in a cost-effective way to share services. When it was formed, we had a lot of merging of debts and assets on the system, and it really helped to regionalize the governance of that and the ownership of the system. And we look at it in terms of a fiscal responsibility to set rates on a cost of service basis that's stable, and timing of capital investments so we don't delay investing in things until something fails and it's a huge impact on the community. So with that, we're kind of to our part two of the presentation to go into our rates and fees. And I think this is where I was going to turn it over to Mike for a few minutes.
Thanks, Dana. So with connection fees, you have upfront fees, you have the buy-in fees or availability fees, and then you have the construction costs. That's actually putting the pipes in the ground, the water service and the sewer service. And then you have your user rates, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. This is something we put together. It's kind of an example. So on the township side, because with the township, it's different than the city. The township has acreage fees. And so in this example on the right, we used 1 acre for this example, kind of to make it simpler to go over. So with if you go through the first 4 lines, the city and the township, and when I said township, that's South Haven and Casco, both would have the same meter deposit fee. That's for your meter pit. And then you have an inspection fee for sewer and water. That's when your contractor and the city comes out and inspects the connection. And then you have the water plant availability fee. That water plant availability fee, that relates back to 2011 when the water treatment plant was built. And so that's to help pay for that debt that we've got. I'll continue on with the township side first. So the township doesn't have the same water availability, sewer availability, or sewer plant availability as the city. So then we go on to the water acreage and the water RU. That's basically to help pay for the debt and the buy-in to the water transmission lines. And then you have the acreage fee for sewer and then the RU for sewer. And that's the same thing. That's buying into the transmission lines to take the wastewater back to the plant and to help pay for the debt that we had originally with the original Sewer and Water Authority. Then you get down to, if needed, water taps in the townships. Those are a flat fee of $37.25. And then sewer taps, if needed, they can range anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000 on up. It just depends. Everything with the sewer taps for both city and township are whatever the actual cost is to put the pipe in the ground. Sewer can be expensive depending on the depths of the mains. And then that'll translate into how much asphalt you have to remove, and then you got to replace the asphalt. So that's kind of how you build up your cost with the sewer taps. Water doesn't, in the township, the water doesn't involve usually removing asphalt. It's more of just, because the mains are outside of the roadway. So then you get the low cost in the township. If you had 1 acre and all you had is the availability fees, you'd be at $22,600. On the higher end, if you had to put in a water tap and a sewer tap, then we put $46,000 in there. That number could be due to the sewer taps. You could be higher or lower than that. So now, if we go back to the city, you've got a water system availability, sewer system availability, and a sewer plant. And so the water goes back to the water transmission lines. The sewer goes back to the sewer lines. And then the plan is for basically money to keep the plant going, do projects in the future, things like that. And then we don't have the water, the other 4 items, we don't have those in the city. And then you get down to, in the city though, the water tap, we don't just charge a flat fee. That is whatever it ends up costing. And a lot of the water mains in the city are under the streets, so you do incur the cost of the asphalt and the curb and potentially sidewalks and things like that. The sewer tap's going to be similar. It's going to be whatever the cost is to put that in with all the replacements of the asphalt, curb, sidewalks, and stuff like that. So in the city, if all you had is availability and you didn't have the water tap or the sewer tap, you could be at around $11,000. And then if you have to do the installations, for this example, we put in $36,000. So now I'm going to go through and kind of break down with some explanations more on all these items. So this is what everybody, if you're in South Haven Township, Casco Township, the city of South Haven, or Covert Township, you're going to pay for your meter and pit. You're going to have the inspection fees to the city staff, and then you're going to have the water plant availability. Then the city only is where I talked about we have these specific paying for the water and sewer systems, basically the pipes that transmit the lines, and then you have the sewer plant. And now with South Haven Township and Casco Township, There is some administrative charges we have for putting things together. And then we have the acreage fee and the water RU, and then the sewer and acreage fee and the sewer RUs. Some of this is the acreage fee is the way that the old sewer water authority set this up originally. This is typical in a more rural setting where you have large areas of acreage for the parcels. When we do this, we only charge up to 1.5 acres for a residential. And then if you go to Covert Township, they're not part of SHAWSA, so it's a little bit different. They own their own lines that we maintain. So Covert, the way they have it set up is they charge a $5,000 escrow to people that want to connect. People have to pay that. Then Covert gets a hold of the city. Then we arrange to either have our guys put it in or a contractor, kind of depending on what we have available with our staff. Or if we have to do if the water main's on one side and the house is on another, and we have to do a directional bore, we're going to have to hire a contractor. We don't have that capability within our staff and our equipment. So then, once again, they'd have the same type of setup with the meter and the inspection, and then the water plant. Covert we don't have sewer down in Covert, so it's only water in Covert. And what is an RU? So we use, one RU is kind of a standard of 250 gallons per day for a house. And it's the way we calculate it, up to 4 bedrooms or 4 bathrooms. If you go over 4 bedrooms or bathrooms, then it's another 0.25 RUs. So in town, if you were to see a larger house put up that had 6, 7 bedrooms, they're going to pay more for that connection. They're going to pay 1.5 or 1.75. And then commercial, we have a chart with the RUs that's set up. We follow that. Sometimes with commercial, though, they'll disagree with what we have on our chart, and we'll give them the opportunity to kind of tell us what it's going to be that they expect it to be, and then we can go into an agreement. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But every connection is a minimum of 1 RU. Just kind of some of the basics here, the tap charges. I kind of talked about it a bit. In the city, your tap charges are going to range typically from $3,000 to $5,000. Sewer taps, $8,000 to $20,000. I've seen it more than this before for a residential house. And then in the township, they have a flat fee of $37.25. That kind of goes back to with the old sewer and water authority. They always had a flat fee different than the city, and we've just kind of perpetuated that with the new sewer and water authority. Then the sewer tap charge, once again, if a new sewer tap's needed, it's going to be somewhere in the range of 8 to 20, could be more. So kind of going back to the tap charges, in the township, when they did a lot of these projects in the late 80s, early 90s, if there was an existing house, typically a water tap was put in front of the house, and then there was a sewer tap put in front of the existing houses. And then they would look at the properties, if there was a lot of vacant land, look at the zoning and what would constitute a buildable lot if they were to split up that larger parcel, and then more sewer taps were put in. So out in the townships, a lot of times the sewer taps are in, but the water isn't if you go to build a house on an empty lot of land. In the city, it's kind of a little bit different. We don't have a lot of empty lots. If we do, it might have been 40 years since there was a house on it. They might have to put in brand new sewer and water because the original sewer service might be 90 years old and an old clay tile and not usable. This is kind of going back to the original sheet that we looked at. So now we've kind of gone through it once, and then we went through all the different fees that are in there, and we just kind of want to put this up here again so that you would kind of, after hearing the scenarios, you'd understand what it is. We do have some different agreements that we can do. So for residents, they can put the availability fees and construction fees onto their property taxes through whatever municipality they're in, either South Haven Township, Casco Township, or the city. It's 20 years at 6.5% interest. It just gives an option to people if they don't have the money up front. There is a way that they can put that onto their taxes. Then you have RU availability fee agreements. This is what I was talking about with the commercial. Say a hotel comes in and our chart says that it would be 50 RUs, which is it's a substantial amount of money to pay. They own other hotels and they might say, we think it's only going to cost 20, or it's only going to be 20 RUs. So they'll go into an agreement with us, and then we'll review their usage, and after 18 months, if, say, in this example, it's not 20, it ends up being 40 or 30, they have to pay that difference. And that's kind of how that works. Indirect connection. This is for like if a developer were to put in a subdivision or something like that, and then as the houses are put in, they get a discount of 45% when they do their connections. It's a way to, because they're going to put in a public system that SHAWSA takes over once the project's done and ready to go. And it just lowers the cost for the houses as they're built to do that. Then a license agreement for utility services. So if you're in an area where there isn't a water main or a sewer main running actually down the road, but say you're 200 feet, 300 feet from where the mains end, you can do a license agreement either in the city or the township and run the sewer service or water service down the parkway or potentially down the road. And in that agreement then, what it says is that the SHAWSA isn't liable basically for that service. That's your service. You're responsible if something were to happen to it. So basically the new customers, they pay a one-time charge when they go to connect to the system. That's the availability fees and whatever construction costs there are. They get the benefit of all the mains that were put in previously to get the sewer or water, the water to them and the sewer away from them. And it's a way for the Sewer Water Authority to take in money to put down or kind of reduce the debts and whatnot. And the tap charges are the work, physical work to actually put the pipes in the ground. So I think, Dana, you were going to take over from there.
Yep, thanks, Mike. And just real quick, just to kind of reiterate a lot of what Mike had said, our new connection costs really fall into the two buckets of these availability fees, which is your buy-in to the system, your amount of capacity. We apportion that equitably through acreage and RU costs. And then the other part, which is highly variable, is your actual tap charge. Some people pay nothing in a tap charge if there's already water and sewer stubbed. Other people, if they have to rip up a concrete road and get all the way out to a lateral or run along service, those costs can really add up over time. But the availability fees are the costs that have been set over time as those kind of buy-in allocation costs for new connections. So we wanted to spend a few minutes going through a monthly bill just to give people a sense for the actual monthly charges that they see on their bill. Those fall into a few main categories. There's the commodity or the usage charge based on how much water you use. If it goes through your meter, you get billed as water, and then that also gets billed as sewer. And then the ready-to-serve rates, which are fixed system cost. It's a fixed amount that's the same every month. And in Casco and South Haven Township, there's a couple additional charges that those customers see that city customers don't, related to the old debts on those systems. So what we set our kind of monthly rates based on is our operating cost of the system. So what does it cost day to day to operate, maintain the system? So they're different from the upfront one-time buy-in costs. We don't know in any given year how many people are going to connect to the system. So we try and forecast that based on historical averages of how many people connect. That becomes revenue on the system that can help pay for things. But if we go through a period of time or an economic downturn and there's no activity on the system, there's no new connections. And so we still have to have all of our infrastructure in place to serve our existing customers. And so our recurring monthly charges have to be set up to sustain us year to year to year to be able to support our existing customer base. So this is a lot of information. I don't expect anybody to read it, but this is what the back of your utility bill looks like from the city. If you want to take the time and read through it, it's got items in yellow that are electrical system related, green is sewer related, and blue is water system related. Those are kind of general descriptions of what each of the different charges are. I'm going to go through a table of a typical utility bill here in a second. But one thing that a lot of people see is on their utility bill, they're charged for electricity, they're charged for water, and they're charged for sewer. So if you're a customer of all of those systems, you'll see charges related to that. If you're a customer, say in Covert Township, you're going to get a separate electric bill from a different electric utility provider, and you might actually get a separate bill from Covert Township because they have a small area where they run a sewer system. So your bill may only include water system charges. And then same thing in the townships. If you're outside of the city's electric utility service area, you get a separate bill from consumers, and you may only be billed for water and sewer. So to kind of break down this table, this is an example of what charges a customer could see on their monthly bill. It's billed in hundreds of cubic feet per month. So we base it on that, on your billing units, on your bill that you receive in the mail, you see CCF. But on average, about 4,500 gallons per month is this example. So for the water system, there's a usage charge of $3.98. That's multiplied by the amount of usage that a customer would have. And that's the same for whether you're in the city, South Haven Township, or Casco Township. Your ready-to-serve charges are a fixed monthly charge. In our utility system, our fixed monthly charges are higher than a lot of other communities. That has to do with the uniqueness of our system, the geography of it, and the fact that we need to have it operating for a seasonal influx of people coming and going to handle those peak times. So those fees are fixed for that purpose. And those do vary. We have different rates within the city versus the townships. And then we have the township additional charges for debt service and O&M. So those charges really go back to when the township systems were separate and there was legacy debt on the system that still has to be paid. Those are broken into two different components because that's how the funding model was set up when SHAWSA was established. Once all the township debts are paid off around the 2034 timeframe, those charges should fall away, and we'll need to do another big study on resetting those types of costs. But every year we review the usage and the ready-to-serve costs because that's really the component that, separate from the debt, we need to maintain the system every year. And then we look at how much revenue that brings in, regardless of whether we're in a time of economic growth or no new construction. For sewer usage, the charge is $677 times the usage, and that works out to be about $40 a month. And then there's the ready-to-serve costs, which helps pay for all the infrastructure that we have in the ground already. Those vary from city to township, but there are additional township charges that carry forward onto people's bills. So if you have a water usage of 600 cubic feet per month, you should see your total bill for water and sewer work out to be about $150 to $170 a month, depending on where you live in the system. So I want to talk a little bit, we're kind of winding down with the presentation portion of this. Just a little bit to highlight on, what does it take to operate and maintain the system. All of these things go into managing our utility. We have major infrastructure assets of our filtration plant, our wastewater plant. We have an enormous amount of compliance and reporting from our labs that we have. We have a lab in each plant. We have to do daily, monthly, annual reporting. We're constantly taking samples within our water distribution system. And then we have a lot of different reports that we have to send to the state every year because they're highly regulated systems, and they should be that way because it's a public health service that we provide. Having clean, safe drinking water is one of the greatest public health improvements of the last several hundred years. And so we're proud to be part of a team of people that provide that to the community. We do a lot of operation and maintenance on the system, from turning valves to flushing hydrants to jetting sewers. When we have water main breaks or sewer backups, there's a lot of reporting that goes along with that. We're constantly looking at when do we reinvest in the system for capital construction. A good example of that is when Huron Street was reconstructed recently. We were not planning on replacing that water main because we were hoping to get another 25 years out of it. But when we uncovered the road and we had some issues with valves and hydrants, we decided, okay, now's the time when the road is not there to replace the pipe. So that was a decision to do the water main with that project. We have to keep things flowing 24/7, and when they go out, we have to respond. So we do have people on call throughout the year. We have to meter and locate utilities for anyone else who's digging and to bill the customers. We coordinate service connections, and we have a lot of lead line and service inventory work being done. So this is just a picture of some of the team that supports that. Everything that a customer pays goes into what it takes for us from a manpower perspective. It also goes into our equipment that we need to respond to do maintenance. And this is a very rough schematic of some of our filtration plant. But those buildings have a lot of major equipment and piping that has to keep working all the time to provide service. Just to real touch on, we're getting close to the end of the presentation, but our current projects that we're doing, it really is an incredible time to invest this much money in South Haven. We're doing, I think, $42 million worth of projects over about a 3-year period, and we're getting $20 million of that, almost half, paid for in just grant money. A lot of that came from the American Rescue Plan or the bipartisan infrastructure law, and there were applications made several years ago. Those were successful, and we were able to make those investments now. So you see a lot of activity in construction right now. Those also come along with low-interest loans. So I just put some information on here about, we have a 30-year loan at 1.875%, which is way below market, and that allows us to keep our rates stable and make all these investments at the same time. And then we have another grant for a project we're kicking off right now at the wastewater plant to protect it from the next time Lake Michigan comes up really high. The last time the lake was really high, I think Jeremy had fish swimming right out of his front door. And so if the lake had continued to rise at that point, there would be a lot more concern. So we were able to get a grant from the state of Michigan to do a project to help protect the wastewater plant from future events like that. On the water system side, we've obviously built a new elevated storage tank. That won't have water in it until probably late summer. So there's still a lot of work to do on that tank, even though it is up in the air. We're building a booster station. We're replacing a lot of lead lines and putting in a lot of water main throughout the community to feed the new booster pump station. Same thing with that. We were able to get a lot of low interest loans and grants with that. So that really does help lower the cost to the customer, but we are still in a period of investment that we've seen coming for several years, and that's one of the reasons our rates have gone up is because we do have to pay for all the work that's going on right now. So from a system funding and rate setting perspective, we'll go through this and then we'll get to some of the questions. that people have asked. We try and set things on a cost of service basis. We work with a rate consultant that's nationally recognized. We do a study every year or two on the system where we take a comprehensive look at all of our revenue, all of our expenses, all of the upcoming requirements that we can see coming, all of the capital projects we see coming, and all of the existing debt. And so that study takes about 3 months from start to finish it whenever we do it. But it's a real comprehensive look to decide, are we increasing rates? Is it gonna be 6.9%? Is it gonna be 4%? Is it gonna be 2%? But we do have increased cost every year. COVID resulted in cost of materials going up as well as construction and labor. We're starting to see those costs come down a little bit, but they're still increasing a little bit every year. Couple of the factors that we looked at when we do these studies and we set rates is there's a minimum debt coverage ratio that we have to maintain on the system. So because we issue bonds, government bonds, to fund a lot of these projects, there's requirements in our audit that show that we have to have a certain amount of revenue to cover our operating expenses as well as our debt. So that's one of the key factors that we look at, is not going into default on those debts, as well as keeping minimum cash reserves. The example I gave of Huron Street, we don't know when we're gonna run into a $200,000 problem. We have a lot of infrastructure in the system, a lot of it's old, and so we have to have some cash reserve to be able to respond to events that can occur on the system. And then we try and maintain an optimal operating income throughout that period. So just as an overall recap, every utility system is unique. It is very difficult to compare our rates to other community rates unless you take the whole context into account when you're looking at it from the utility manager perspective. Every system has a unique geography, history, customer base that supports it. Systems can vary as how much they're going to make investments into their system. Some communities may neglect their infrastructure for decades, and then they get hit with a big balloon of needs. South Haven the whole area has been very good about making some continuous investments over time, but that also accumulates debt over time, and so we have to balance that out with affordability and how do we keep a fiscally sustainable system when we know things aren't going to last forever. SHAWSA was formed in the not-so-distant past to work together on these things, to have a common ownership model and try and make it as cost-effective as we can for the customers. And then when we look at our rates and fees, we do that annually, but we look at it in terms of the next 5 years to fund what we're doing. And we come up with a stability plan that tries to make rates predictable and stable. And then when we make decisions on the system, we really have to think about it in terms of what we're deciding to do today. Folks are going to have to pay for 30 to 40 years, and those assets need to last for 50 to 100 years. So we really look far into the future for that. So we may have gone slightly over a half hour, which I apologize for. I appreciate everybody's time. But we do have plenty of time to try and go over some questions. I don't know if folks have other comment cards that they filled out during the presentation, but we do have Megan who has some of the comment cards, and I think we'll try and go through as many of those as we can. We'll probably try and wrap up by 6:30, 6:35 or so, because we have to break down the room to get out of here. If we didn't get to someone's question or comment, and you left us contact information, Mike and I are going to be going through all those, and we will try and either follow up directly with you, or we're going to be working on like a frequently asked questions type document. And we're going to put this presentation on our website on SHAWSA, as well as you'll be able to get to it through the city's website. And if anyone has questions that come up, they can always email dpw@southhavenmi.gov as well. So I guess with that.
Alrighty. As a reminder, you will have 2 minutes to address Dana and Mike here to ask your questions. And I'll call the 2 people who requested to speak. So first I have Becky.
We really appreciate everybody coming tonight. Oh yeah, you can come up to the mic there if you don't mind. We do appreciate everybody coming out tonight. We weren't sure how many people would want to hear the inner workings of our rates and fees, and so Mike and I could talk about infrastructure all day.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And my biggest thing, and I think many of my neighbors' biggest thing, is our overall monthly costs. You mentioned $150 to $170 per month average. Myself personally, our bill is $327 a month average. It goes down sometimes to $277, and the high end, $432. That's a little bit much for water, and so we're looking for some help. We're up a couple miles north of town, excuse me, so we're looking for some assistance on how can we reduce those rates? Why are we paying so much more than people in the city, excuse me, for the same water and for the same usage? And what can be done about that? And do you have your rate tables posted somewhere? Is it different by the size of whatever your meter is? Do you have different rates? You kept saying that it's consistent. We don't find it to be consistent. When I talk to some of the neighbors, they're different rates. Everybody's paying something different. A couple people will have the same, and I'm talking ready to use, which
Yep.
is our ongoing costs. So
Okay.
that's a problem that we need your help. And then when and how do we benefit from adding households to the new system? We were told, when we moved 9 years ago, that it would start to go down because you have more people using the new system. Ours has gone up every year, or maybe every 2 years. And so how can you help us with that, which is a big issue for us? And then you talked about the auditing. And then, do you know how many people are actually using the new system versus still using an old system or a well or something to that effect? And can you respond to that?
Yeah, so we'll try and go through those. So in terms of the number of water account customers we have the account numbers, and we can see how many new accounts get opened every year. We also keep records when new services are run on the system. We don't really track how many new well permits come into the townships. Wells and septic are permitted through the county health department. So we don't really track, like in terms of growth numbers, how many people are going onto a well versus on the public system. We just track the public side.
So you don't force people into the new system?
If service is available, we like people to connect, but I don't believe we mandate the connection. The county may mandate you connect to sewer. If there's a public sewer available, they don't want you building a septic system. But for water, I think it's people's option. In the city, we require connection, but in the townships, I think, they're allowed to put in a well if they think that's more cost effective for them.
So in essence, will we get any kind of benefit or any kind
Yeah,
of
so-
cost reductions coming our way? Because it's getting ridiculous on how much we're paying.
Yeah, so on your rate question, you must have a lot of usage, or your REU factor may be very
Now,
high.
that's my fixed cost. That's not my usage. It's the
what size
fixed
meter
costs
they
are
have.
over $220 a month for fixed costs.
Yeah,
$220 a month. That's more than the average that you said a person should pay for all of their service.
yeah, so the numbers that we included in the presentation were if you have a 5/8 meter. So it could be that you have a larger meter, because the rates are published on SHAWSA's website, and we're working to make that a little more accessible and understandable. But the rate, all the information is there under rates and fees.
Yeah,
And
we
so
looked for it and we have not been able to
Okay.
find it, so maybe I can.
Well, and
get some help
if,
with
it sounds
that.
like we have your name and contact information on the card, so we'll be able to follow up specifically in your case. But folks can, reduce their usage over time, but if you do have a larger meter, or you have a larger home that is maybe charged more than one REU, then those costs would be higher than what was presented in the table.
I mean, our meter may be larger, but it shouldn't be that much larger that we're paying double
Yeah,
what others are paying.
yeah.
And I use my time. I'm
Okay.
sure. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, next I have Tim Tomazak.
So my question's gonna be a little bit redundant. We live across the street from Becky. So the question is, on the ready-to-serve, we're a little bit less, but we live right across the street. So our ready-to-serve is $134 a month after July of this year.
With water and sewer
Water and sewer
combined.
combined,
Yeah.
$134 a month. So why is it that our costs are different than Becky's costs when we live right across the street? Same number of bedrooms in the house. We both have a fire suppression system. So why would they be different?
Yeah, so we would have to look at your bills side by side to dig into that, but some of the factors that could affect that is, up in the upper left corner, the information in this table is based on a 1 REU and a 5/8 inch meter. And so the rates are set different if you have more REUs or a larger meter on your system. And they're set that way to apportion the cost equitably among all the customers. So if you have a single-family home that's 4 bedrooms or less, it should only be a 1 REU. But if you have a larger home, you might have a higher REU factor on your bill, and we can look at those to compare. The other factor is the meter size. So if a larger home, if your plumber recommended putting in a 1-inch meter or something like that, your costs would be higher. So on our website, and when we do our financial study, we have a table based on meter size as to what those fixed costs are. And the concept is larger meters are using more on the system, and so they pay more of an apportioned share than a smaller metered customer on the system.
I think we're pretty unique on Windcliff Drive. All the houses have to have a fire suppression system.
Yeah, you're the only area that has that.
Thank you. So we have 2 taps, I guess you would call them. Does that have an effect on our ready-to-use number? Is that why we're so high?
Your fire suppression line wouldn't be metered. It should just be your main line, but it could be you've got a 1-inch meter versus the 5/8, and that's partially contributing to your higher costs.
A lot of them up there have 1.5 or 2-inch meters.
Okay, then that would really jump it then.
Yeah. So, for folks, if you have individual questions about your specific bill, we can certainly give you a call and try and walk through that with you. I know the customer service folks at City Hall and in billing, they field a lot of questions about this, and we do a pretty good job of reviewing those. And so we could get you a specific answer looking at your specific bill.
Okay, and before I rapid fire some questions at Dana, does anyone have any other additional comment cards they would like to come up and present? No? Okay. All right. Is there a plan, and if there is, what is the plan for fluoride in the city water system?
So, yeah, we've talked about this as a SHAWSA board, and we do have our water filtration plant operator, Richie Garcia, here as well, and he can correct me if I state anything wrong, but fluoride has always been part of our treatment system in South Haven. From when the filtration plant was built. The plant is designed to feed fluoride into the system, and when their plant is designed to feed fluoride, you comply with the state's recommendations for that. There's been a lot of discussion about this recently. The board is looking at reviewing the current plant design and policy as to the pros and cons of adding fluoride or removing that from the system. But there is some naturally occurring fluoride within our source water, and so we wouldn't ever treat it to remove that. It's just a matter of if our plant is designed to feed fluoride, we do add some. It's a very small amount, but we are reviewing that policy so that we can clarify some of the ongoing discussion related to fluoride.
All right, thank you very much. Due to the extended warm weather into the fall, has there been any discussions to extend the cap for additional months for the sewer rate cap in the fall?
Yeah, so I think this question is related to the summer sewer credit policy. So folks who have a single service line to their house that's metered, then that branches and feeds their irrigation system. Well, they get billed during certain months of the year. You're billed for all the water that goes through. Your meter is also charged to your sewer account. In the summer, we offer a period of time where we cap it, I believe, at 1,000. And so you can irrigate your yard, you're using more water, but that water's not going into your sewer. So that policy's been in place for quite some time. I know we have had a couple of periods of really warm Septembers. So when people continue to irrigate in through the month of September, all that usage is billed as sewer. We don't know in any given year if we're gonna have a really warm May or a really warm September. So this has come up every year, and the board has decided, the policy is what it is. Some years we'll have warm May, some years we'll have warm September. But it's really set up that way because that's how we need to manage our billing cycle throughout the system.
Wonderful. What was the cost to paint a mural on the new water tank versus what it would cost to paint it just a solid color?
Yeah. So the coating on the tank, every steel tank, actually every steel piece of equipment we have gets coated and colored. And it's never cheaper to paint than when it's on the ground. So in any given tank, it can cost $100,000 to paint a tank. And so that mural was a little more than painting it just a solid color. But we were able to fund a lot of that with grant funding as well. So I think we were able to provide a nice looking tank at similar costs to if we had painted it up in the air as a solid color.
Wonderful.
It's a wrap, isn't it, not paint?
No, it's paint that has additives in it, and it protects the steel, so it's part of a protective coating on the tank.
Okay, and this last one is kind of a couple of questions in one. So how are the hookup charges calculated for multifamily and mobile home parks? What are the costs? And then this one was an additional question, why are the hookup fees so high?
Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about multifamily?
Yeah, so we have that RU chart, and it spells out for multifamily. I think off the top of my head, for the first unit, it's 1 RU. After that, it's 0.8. So there is a reduction. Was the other one mobile home park? Off the top of my head, I don't know what a mobile home park's going to be. I would guess it's roughly 1 for year-round living in a mobile home park.
For each mobile home or for the park itself?
No, the park's going to be based, though, on all the mobile homes that are in it. So if you've got 30 mobile homes, they're each going to be individually charged to create that number for RUs.
What about the tax collection?
Typically on something like that, because they're hiring a contractor to build their system in a development, that's something that the owner's going to pay themselves. So say they have to put in an 8-inch line to do that 8-inch tap of the main to run through the development, the developer's going to pay for all that. We're not necessarily going to, the money isn't going to go through our hands on that situation.
I just had something to add to that. In the system, there are some mobile home parks that are master metered. And so some of the folks who have individual units within that get a bill from the park itself. And then the only bill that we interact with that park on is the master meter water. And I think there were a couple of them in our top 10 water users. A couple of the parks in town, the one over behind Meyer is master metered, I believe. And so if you have a unit within that park, you may receive a bill, but it's not going to be a bill from the city. We bill the master metered usage, and then you might get charged separate from your community.
So how would you figure out the master unit? In other words, if it's built that way?
If it's built with a master meter, so they might have like a 4-inch meter that feeds multiple units within the park, and so they would pay a very high ready-to-serve cost because it's supporting multiple units, and then they would be billed for the usage. What they then go bill the individual units beyond that, I would have to look and see how that compares to what our cost is to provide them the water.
So when they put in the meter, are they charged by the number of sites they have in there? In other words, the RU initial one?
Yeah, if someone were to build a new park and individually meter each unit, for a master metered park,
It wouldn't matter. They're going to pay X amount of RUs, whether there's individual meters or not. Upfront, you
Yeah.
pay that initial cost to buy into the system. It's not gonna change any.
And why are hookup fees so high?
Yeah, so the hookup fees for a larger water user, that probably goes back to the explanation on availability fees. So every customer who's a new customer onto the system buys into the capacity of everything that's there, whether it's the wastewater plant, the water filtration plant, or the pipes and pumps that it takes to get to that point of service. And so the costs are spread out among all the customers equitably that way. We use that REU schedule, so that's the basis for those costs. So if you're a very large commercial or industrial customer, you're going to have a larger meter, you're going to pay more upfront, and then you're going to pay more every month because you have a higher kind of ownership stake in the system at that point. Yeah. Sure.
So for operations with large fixed costs, what they normally do to reduce cost per user is increase the number of users. That's usually the normal way. So if I had a business and I wanted to come up with a business plan that guaranteed I got no more customers, I think I could take your business plan. I mean, who wants to spend that much money to connect if you have an option? It seems like there might be a better business model if you really want to attract new users. And I mean, I've seen your consultant's report, and I know where he's going with that. But we moved from a municipality where our ready-to-serve fee was zero. Those fees were rolled into the usage per 100 cubic feet. The municipality I'm talking about was New York City. We do not have cheap fixed cost. Our city water comes from reservoirs in the Catskills. They bring it into the city through tunnels that have been drilled under the Hudson River. But they manage, the way they manage their debts is to roll that into the usage fee. And I think what you're doing here with the high connections and ready to serve is, well, one, you're discouraging conservation. I mean, our entire bills are ready to serve. There's no real incentive to conserve because that part of our bill is so minimal. And then the connection fees are so high, you're never going to increase that denominator that's really going to decrease the cost for everybody. So that's just my comment.
No, appreciate it. No, and we understand, I mean, we get the question quite frequently. We have the system that we have, and, you know, it's hard to compare us to a New York City. It's not even the same thing. It's hard to compare us to a Kalamazoo. We're a small to mid-sized system. Certainly having more customers on the system would help lower the cost for everybody, but not on the scale that you're talking about. You know, we do have capacity to serve more people from a water perspective. We're looking at improvements at our wastewater plant for things that we have to replace anyway, to replace them on a greater capacity scale so that we can be able to continue to add customers onto the system. We do have a lot of developments looking to come onto the system right now. There's like apartments in South Haven Township, there's hotels, and then there's just infill connections among the city. There's developments within the city. So a lot of growth is happening. A lot of that comes with economic rises and falls, but you know, we have a pretty well-established economic model for a small to mid-sized utility in the state of Michigan.
Ask a question based on what you just said. How do we then benefit when you add more people? We don't seem to get any benefit from the growth from anywhere. How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, you may not see that because we've been increasing the amount of investment on the system, so we are in a period of rate increases, but we're working to reduce those increases from more of the 6-7% down to the 2-3% range over time, so that we can just kind of keep up with increases in fixed costs. You know, if we had a major customer come on, that may impact a larger portion of the system, but just kind of steady growth within the community it helps, but it's not gonna make a overall significant difference on what it takes to provide what we provide today. Yeah, did you wanna chime in, Ross? I don't know if this is gonna reverb on me if I go out here, but we'll see.
The new connection fees, when the township did our bond funding, part of it was paid for by new connections. So if our new connections went down, the cost would go up because the new connections are helping pay for the bond cost. So that's where you're benefiting from the new connections that are coming in.
So it's about 6:30. We'll probably do a few more questions and then start breaking down. Yeah, you had your hand up.
Can you explain how the size of the meter relates to the usage? Like, it seems like if you had a smaller meter, you're just gonna have to run your water longer to get the same amount of water that if you had a larger meter. Am I not understanding that correctly?
Yeah, so the majority of people have a 5/8 inch or 3/4 inch meter, and I believe our fee is the same for both of those. So the size of your meter depends on a typical single-family home would have a 5/8 or 3/4. It's when you get into a larger home or a home that, maybe in the case of the systems that have fire protection, need to be able to deliver more water. When you have a peak usage of water going through that meter, there can be some loss in pressure. And so that's where people will upsize their meter if they're gonna be using more water, whether it's to run an irrigation system or a fire protection system. But a typical home only needs a 5/8 or 3/4 inch meter. The usage charge would be the same, whether you have an 1.5 inch meter or you have a 5/8 inch meter. So like for water, the $3.98 per 100 cubic feet, that cost would be the same whether you have a big meter or a small meter. The ready-to-serve charge would be different. And I don't have the number off the top of my head, but if you had an 1.5 inch meter, it would be quite a bit more than $45 a month.
What is, I guess I'm not, still not understanding the reason for that. Why is it higher? Because you're allowing for more pressure?
It's not a physical calculation there. It's more of a apportionment of cost among system users. So people with higher meters are charged more because they're typically using more of the peak on the system when they need water than folks who have a smaller meter.
You were just given that because you had a fire suppression in your building, you thought, oh, I don't know what that is, I've never done that, so I need to make sure.
Yeah, so I would recommend in that case, hiring a licensed plumber or going back to your fire protection design company and saying, do I really need a meter this size?
And you're gonna charge me $20,000 to change the meter or whatever.
Well, no, we don't tell people what size meter to put into their facility. They have to tell us.
If we changed it, you would charge us.
Well, we would update your billing account to the appropriate meter size that you have out there. No, there would not be like a new connection charge. If you're an existing customer and you want to reevaluate the size of your meter and you do an analysis and you decide, I don't need an 1.5 inch, I'm okay with a 1 inch meter, that's your decision on your property part of it. And our billing and customer service folks would work with you to adjust your account appropriately.
I'm not understanding, but I'm gonna have to have a meeting, I think, because we're not
Sure.
why we're paying so much more.
Yeah. Tom?
Trying to say is, they got a 1 inch meter, or a 2 inch meter. If they wanna change it, they can have a plumber change that meter, or does the city change it?
It probably depends on if it's in a meter pit or if it's in the house, right, Dustin?
So you probably have an 1.5 inch meter because you ran an 1.5 inch line for your fire protection. So you're wanting to downsize your meter, but you have to run a second line.
What happened when our builder came to the city to install the water service, the city told them, we don't have 1.5 inch taps. So we do have a 2 inch, we gave them a 2 inch. Not telling them that our costs for homeowners are gonna go way up. So now we have a 2 inch line and meter that we are not using that type of capacity.
Yeah, we can follow up with you.
have a meeting because it's not logical.
Sure. Yeah, Brian?
I wonder, Dana, if you could just comment on the usage versus ready to serve with our unique situation with all the short-term rental houses, like how that kind of equity plays out. The full-time residents and the short-term rental.
Yeah, so our higher ready-to-serve charges are set so that it actually benefits a year-round resident because that system has to be in place and operable throughout the year. And so if folks are leaving for several months of the year, there's still fixed costs to have all that infrastructure in place. And so everyone in the system pays for those costs year-round. If it were just usage-based, you would see a lot of people who leave for several months, their usage would go way down, which then would result in the cost, the revenue that we would need to operate the system going way down. And we would see a lot more of a decline in the winter. And so part of that calculation is to keep the year-round
I think that
resident.
seems faulty. I thought about that myself. I think it's, maybe it's with the microphone, but those short-term rentals typically have a lot of people in them. They use a lot of water. You've probably seen how much water gets used in the summer. And if you had higher usage rates, you would actually get more money back from those because they use so much water because there's so many people in the short-term rentals. So your reasoning that this is a fair way to do it is, I think, is bad.
Yeah, well, I understand that. You know, we do work with a rate consulting company every year that does hundreds of rate studies around the country and a lot in Michigan as well. And this is how they've recommended and advised us on it, and they've gone through detailed discussion with us on there. And yeah.
Following along about the short-term rental, could you explain where we have the, you top out at a certain amount of water usage in the summer, during the summer months? How does that apply to them also? In other words, if it's 1,000 or whatever it is?
Yeah, so the summer sewer credit, you're always billed your water usage, whether you're irrigating or not irrigating, so that never caps. Your sewer usage is capped because the idea is that if you're using water for irrigation, it doesn't go back into the sewer system and need to go through the pipes and be treated. That amount is set at 1,000 cubic feet. So overall usage of a large rental would not typically exceed that amount. It's more the irrigation usage. Irrigation uses significantly more water than even a large home that's occupied week after week after week.
The usage is not excessive as far as?
Yeah, so they're not getting a break on their sewer usage. It would only, they don't hit that threshold.
How many do hit that threshold? Do you have a list of which houses hit that threshold and how many of them are short-term rental versus year-round residents?
We could generate that information from our billing system, but it's not something that we monitor on a regular basis.
I did a sampling, just asking friends to share their water sewer bills with me, and people with even kids didn't hit the 1,000, but, I wasn't able to get the bills from any big short-term rentals where they have 16 people per house, and it just seems like that would hit the cap.
We hit the cap. We live here year-round, but we're new, so we're still putting in our landscaping. We hit that cap, because of our sprinkler system, because we're watering all these new vegetation. But next door, we have a rental, and they have a watering system and local people, so I'm sure they're also hitting.
Yeah,
We get the good damage, they're definitely getting the big damage.
yeah. So we're coming up on 6:40. I know we wanted to wrap up. We have to break down the room.
Oh, you're okay. I just wanted to make a comment on that last comment. People's utility bills and their usage is not public information, so that information would not be given out.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, again, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight, and if we do have information on the comment cards that if we didn't get to someone's question, we'll try and follow up with you, and I know there's a couple people we want to talk to separately. We'll try and schedule an appointment for that. So thanks for coming.